There is a moment each day that most people overlook entirely. It arrives quietly, without announcement, in that gentle space between wakefulness and sleep. You've experienced it countless times. Your body settles into stillness. Your breathing deepens. The noise of the day begins to fade. And in those final minutes before consciousness slips away, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes extraordinarily receptive. The gates that usually guard your deeper thoughts swing open, and whatever you allow to enter in those moments, whatever you permit yourself to think and feel, begins to work its way into the fabric of who you are becoming. This isn't mysticism. This isn't wishful thinking. This is simply how the mind operates when you understand its nature. The thoughts you hold before sleep don't vanish into darkness. They continue working throughout the night, shaping beliefs, influencing emotions, and quietly directing the choices you'll make when morning arrives. Most people surrender these precious moments to worry, to replaying frustrations, to dwelling on what went wrong. And then they wonder why each new day feels like a continuation of yesterday's struggles. But you're here because some part of you already knows there's another way. You're here because you sense that these final moments hold power you haven't fully claimed. Tonight and every night that follows, you have an opportunity to direct your inner world with intention, to plant seeds in fertile ground, to speak to the part of yourself that creates your tomorrow while you sleep. You don't need complicated techniques. You don't need hours of practice. You simply need to understand what happens in those moments before sleep and how to use them wisely, because the person who masters their final thoughts of the day masters the trajectory of their life. And that mastery begins tonight with awareness, with gentleness, and with the quiet confidence that you already possess everything required to shape your own becoming. Let's begin by understanding what makes these moments so powerful. Your conscious mind, the part of you that analyzes and judges and plans, operates differently throughout the day. During waking hours, it filters constantly. It questions, it doubts. It compares what you imagine to what you currently see. And often it chooses to believe the evidence of your present circumstances rather than the possibility of something different. This is natural. This is protection. But it's also limitation. Your conscious mind can be a gatekeeper that prevents new beliefs from taking root, even when those beliefs would serve you. But as you prepare for sleep, as your body relaxes and your thoughts begin to drift, something shifts. The analytical mind loosens its grip. The filter weakens. And beneath it, always present, always listening, is your subconscious mind. This deeper layer doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question whether something is possible or impossible. It simply accepts what you repeatedly present to it as true. It absorbs the emotional tone of your thoughts. It registers the images you hold in your mind's eye. And then, quietly, persistently, it begins to align your automatic behaviors, your intuitions, your very sense of self, with whatever pattern you've impressed upon it. This is why the moments before sleep matter so profoundly. You're not trying to convince your conscious mind of anything. You're speaking directly to the part of yourself that actually runs most of your life. The part that controls your habits, your emotional responses, your sense of what feels natural and right. When you understand this, when you truly grasp that your subconscious is listening most carefully in those drowsy moments before sleep, everything changes. You realize that each night is not an ending but a beginning. Each night is a chance to reprogram, to refine, to redirect the deepest currents of your mind toward the life you're building. Consider repetition for a moment. Repetition is the language your subconscious understands best. A single thought, held once, makes little impression. But a thought returned to again and again, especially when accompanied by feeling, by certainty, by emotional conviction, that thought becomes a groove. It becomes a pathway. Eventually, it becomes belief. And belief, as you've surely noticed, determines everything. What you believe about yourself shapes what you attempt. What you believe is possible determines what opportunities you even notice. What you believe you deserve influences what you accept and what you reject. So when you bring the same thoughts, the same images, the same sense of who you are becoming to your mind each night before sleep, you're not engaging in empty repetition. You're building belief through accumulated impression. You're teaching your subconscious what to expect, what to move toward, what to recognize as yours. Night after night, the message deepens. And one day, often without dramatic announcement, you notice that what once felt impossible now feels natural. What once required tremendous willpower now happens automatically. This is the fruit of patience, of consistency, of understanding how transformation actually occurs. Let me share with you the story of someone who discovered this principle not through books or teachings, but through necessity. Her name was Eleanor, and she ran a modest accounting firm in a quiet Midwestern city. For years, she'd functioned competently, handling her responsibilities, managing her small team, meeting her obligations. But Eleanor carried a constant undercurrent of anxiety. She worried about making mistakes. She second-guessed her decisions. And when unexpected challenges arose, her first instinct was always to imagine the worst possible outcome. This pattern had become so automatic that she barely noticed it anymore. It was simply how her mind worked. Then came a period of particular difficulty. Several major clients threatened to leave. Financial pressure mounted, and Eleanor found herself lying awake at night, mind racing through catastrophic scenarios. One especially difficult evening, exhausted but unable to sleep, she noticed something. She noticed that she was mentally rehearsing failure. Over and over, as she lay there in the dark, she was imagining conversations where clients expressed disappointment, visualizing her business collapsing, feeling in her body the shame and defeat of loss. And suddenly she wondered, what if her mind was learning from these rehearsals? What if by repeatedly imagining failure just before sleep, she was teaching herself to expect it, to move toward it, to create it? The thought unsettled her enough that she decided to try something different. Nothing elaborate, nothing forced. She simply began each night before sleep to mentally review one thing that had gone well that day. Not perfectly, not extraordinarily, just well. A client who'd expressed satisfaction, a problem she'd solved competently, a moment where she'd felt clear and capable. She would find one such moment, replay it gently in her mind, and then allow herself to feel, just briefly, the quiet satisfaction of having handled something well. Then she would sleep. The first weeks brought no dramatic shift. Eleanor still felt anxious during the day, still doubted herself, but she maintained her simple nightly practice. One thing that went well, one moment of competence, one feeling of quiet capability held gently before sleep, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. She noticed herself remembering past successes more readily during the day. When challenges arose, she found herself thinking of times she'd handled similar situations well, rather than immediately jumping to disaster scenarios. Her decisions came more quickly, with less second guessing. Clients began commenting that she seemed more confident, more assured. Within 6 months, her business had stabilized. Within a year, it had grown beyond anything she'd previously achieved. But what struck Eleanor most wasn't the external success. It was the internal shift. She'd become someone who expected herself to handle things well, someone who trusted her own capability. And she traced this transformation directly to those quiet moments before sleep, when she'd patiently, consistently redirected her mind toward evidence of her own competence. She hadn't fought her anxiety. She hadn't tried to force confidence. She'd simply, night after night, given her subconscious mind different material to work with. And her subconscious, receiving this new pattern repeatedly, had gradually reshaped her automatic responses, her intuitions, her very sense of self. Eleanor's story illustrates something crucial. She didn't use elaborate techniques. She didn't require hours of practice. She simply understood that the mind learns from what it repeatedly encounters, especially in those receptive moments before sleep. And she chose consciously and consistently to direct her final thoughts toward the patterns she wanted to strengthen rather than the fear she wanted to overcome. This is available to everyone. This is available to you. The question isn't whether your mind is programmable. It is. The question is whether you'll take responsibility for what programs it. Consider another example, quite different in circumstance but similar in principle. There was a young man named Marcus who worked in construction. Physical labor, early mornings, modest income. Marcus had no particular dissatisfaction with his work, but he carried a quiet longing for something more. He wanted to build his own projects, to create something lasting, to develop skills beyond what his current job required. But he'd never been particularly disciplined. He started projects and abandoned them. He made plans and forgot them. His life felt scattered, reactive, driven more by circumstance than intention. One evening, listening to an older coworker talk about his own regrets, about opportunities missed through lack of follow-through, Marcus felt a deep stirring. He didn't want to look back decades later and realize he'd never pursued what mattered to him. But he also didn't trust himself to suddenly become disciplined through willpower alone. He'd tried that before. It never lasted. So he decided to try something subtler. Each night, just before sleep, he would spend 2 or 3 minutes visualizing himself as someone who followed through. Not visualizing specific achievements, not imagining distant success. Simply seeing himself in ordinary moments throughout the next day, doing what he said he would do, keeping small commitments, following through on simple intentions, being, in quiet, unremarkable ways, a person of discipline. He would imagine waking up when he intended rather than hitting snooze. He would see himself keeping a commitment to read for 20 minutes. He would visualize himself choosing the longer term benefit over the immediate comfort. Small things, ordinary things. But each night before sleep, he would hold this image of himself as someone whose actions matched his intentions. And he would let himself feel what it felt like to be that person. Reliable, consistent, trustworthy, especially to himself. The transformation didn't happen overnight. But within weeks, Marcus noticed he was following through more often. Not perfectly, not always, but more. He'd set an intention to do something. And later in the day, almost automatically, he'd find himself doing it. It wasn't that he'd developed superhuman willpower. It was that his sense of identity had shifted. At a deep level, he'd begun to see himself as someone who keeps commitments. And because his subconscious mind had absorbed this image night after night, it had started guiding his automatic choices toward alignment with that identity. Within 2 years, Marcus had completed 3 significant personal projects. He'd learned new skills. He'd developed a side business that eventually became his primary work. But when people asked him how he'd changed, he struggled to explain it in a way that sounded impressive. He hadn't done anything dramatic. He'd simply, each night before sleep, reminded his deeper mind of who he was becoming. And his deeper mind, receiving this message consistently, had made it true. These stories share a common thread. Neither Eleanor nor Marcus tried to force change through conscious effort alone. Both understood, whether explicitly or intuitively, that lasting transformation happens in the deeper layers of mind. And both used the moments before sleep to influence those deeper layers with patience and consistency. This is the approach available to you. Not dramatic, not complicated, but profoundly effective when practiced with understanding and persistence. Now let's explore more specifically what you can do in those precious moments before sleep. The practices I'm about to describe aren't rigid rituals. They're not steps you must follow in exact order. They're invitations to mental habits that serve your growth. You'll find what resonates with you. You'll develop your own rhythm. But the underlying principles remain constant. You're using the receptive state before sleep to impress certain patterns on your subconscious mind. You're doing so with gentle consistency, and you're trusting the process to work beneath the surface even when you can't see immediate results. Begin with review, but not the kind of review most people practice. Most people, if they review their day at all, focus on mistakes, on what went wrong, on what they wish they'd done differently. This keeps the mind oriented toward failure. It reinforces anxiety. It teaches the subconscious that the world is full of threats and that you are inadequate to meet them. Instead, practice a different kind of review. As you settle into bed, gently scan back through your day and find moments, however small, where you showed up as the person you're becoming. Maybe you kept a commitment to yourself. Maybe you responded to difficulty with patience instead of reactivity. Maybe you made a choice aligned with your values rather than your impulses. Find these moments. Acknowledge them. Let yourself feel, just briefly, the satisfaction of having expressed your better self. This isn't positive thinking disconnected from reality. This is selective attention based on understanding. Your subconscious learns from whatever you repeatedly emphasize. By consistently directing your attention toward evidence of your growth, you teach your deeper mind to expect more of the same. You strengthen the neural pathways associated with your desired identity. You make it easier, more automatic, more natural to show up that way again tomorrow. This is how character is built, not through dramatic reinvention, but through patient recognition of incremental alignment. After reviewing what went well, practice release. The day has brought tensions, frustrations, disappointments. You've encountered difficult people, challenging situations, moments that didn't unfold as you hoped. If you carry these into sleep, if you allow your final thoughts to replay grievances and rehearse frustration, you embed these patterns more deeply. You teach your nervous system that the world is hostile and that you must remain vigilant and defensive. Instead, consciously release what doesn't serve you. You don't need to pretend it didn't happen. You don't need to convince yourself it was fine when it wasn't. You simply acknowledge that holding on to it serves no purpose, and you consciously let it go. Imagine, if it helps, that you're setting down heavy bags you've been carrying. One by one, you place them outside your bedroom door. They're not denied. They're not ignored. They're simply not invited into your sleep. If issues require attention, you'll address them tomorrow with a clearer mind. But right now, in these moments before sleep, you give yourself permission to rest from struggle. You allow your nervous system to soften, to release its grip, to remember that not everything is an emergency. This practice of release is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself. It honors the truth that you can't carry everything all the time and still function well. With mind cleared and attention settled, you move into what might be called gentle direction. This is where you begin speaking more directly to your subconscious, not through forced affirmations that feel hollow, not through desperate attempts to convince yourself of things you don't believe, but through calm, consistent presentation of who you're becoming and what you're building. You might visualize yourself moving through tomorrow with clarity and confidence, not in extraordinary circumstances, but in ordinary ones. See yourself responding to challenges with steadiness. See yourself making choices aligned with your values. See yourself feeling capable, grounded, clear. The key is to make these visualizations feel natural, even inevitable. You're not reaching for something distant and unlikely. You're simply reminding yourself of who you actually are at your best and allowing your subconscious to prepare to express that version of you more consistently. Pair these images with feeling. How does it feel to move through your day with confidence? How does it feel to trust yourself, to feel aligned with your purpose, to know you're building something meaningful? Let yourself experience these feelings, even briefly, before sleep. Your subconscious responds powerfully to emotion. When you combine clear images with genuine feeling, you create impressions that go deep and last long. Some people find it helpful to quietly reaffirm their core identity and purpose, not as something they're trying to become, but as something they're choosing to remember and embody. You might silently state, I am someone who keeps commitments to myself. I am someone who faces difficulty with courage. I am someone who creates value. I am someone who trusts the process of growth. Choose statements that resonate with who you're becoming. Speak them inwardly with conviction, not as wishes, but as declarations of identity. And then release them into your subconscious as you drift toward sleep, trusting that they'll continue working throughout the night. This practice of reinforcing identity is extraordinarily powerful because identity drives behavior far more effectively than willpower ever could. When you deeply believe you are a certain kind of person, acting in accordance with that identity becomes natural. You don't have to force yourself. You simply express who you are. By consistently affirming your chosen identity before sleep, you gradually shift your deeper sense of self. And as that deeper sense shifts, your automatic behaviors align with it. This is why people who successfully transform their lives often report that at some point, change stopped feeling like effort. They'd become someone for whom the new behaviors were simply natural expressions of who they were. Another practice worth cultivating is what might be called future memory. Before sleep, briefly imagine a moment from your future, weeks or months ahead, when something you're building has come to fruition. Don't force specifics. Don't get tangled in trying to control exactly how it happens. Simply imagine the feeling of having achieved something meaningful, the quiet satisfaction, the sense of alignment, the knowledge that your consistency paid off. Let yourself experience that feeling as if it's already happened, as if you're remembering rather than imagining. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish sharply between vivid imagination and actual memory. When you repeatedly experience the feeling of success before it arrives, you create a kind of expectation, a gravitational pull toward that outcome. You prime yourself to recognize opportunities, to make choices to persist through difficulties, because at a deep level you already know that success is coming. This isn't magical thinking. This is understanding how motivation and perception work. When you genuinely expect something good, you behave differently than when you doubt and worry. You notice different things. You interpret circumstances differently. You persist longer. By cultivating the feeling of success before it manifests, you make yourself into someone who naturally moves toward it. Perhaps the most important thing to understand about these practices is that none of them require perfection. You won't do them flawlessly every night. Some nights you'll forget entirely. Some nights you'll be too exhausted. Some nights your mind will be too chaotic to settle. This is normal. This is human. The power doesn't come from perfect execution. The power comes from consistent return. You practice when you can. You practice imperfectly. And you trust that even imperfect practice repeated over time creates profound change. There's a crucial insight that often arrives only after someone has practiced these principles for some time. It's the recognition that success is rarely built during the loud, busy, visible hours of the day. Success is built during the quiet moments, the moments of reflection, the moments of intentional direction, the moments when no one is watching and nothing external is demanding your attention. These are the moments when you actually shape yourself, when you impress patterns on your subconscious, when you cultivate the beliefs and expectations that will determine what you attempt and how you respond to difficulty. Most people focus all their energy on action, on doing more, on pushing harder during waking hours. And then they collapse into sleep without any conscious direction, allowing their subconscious to marinate in whatever random thoughts and feelings happen to be present. They're building a house while leaving the foundation to chance. They're trying to steer a ship while letting the rudder swing freely. And then they wonder why progress feels so difficult, why change feels so elusive, why they can't seem to break through to the next level despite tremendous effort. But when you understand that the real work happens in those quiet moments before sleep, everything shifts. You realize that 10 focused minutes before rest, consistently applied, will create more lasting change than 10 unfocused hours of activity. You begin to value stillness as much as motion. You begin to see that directing your mind is not passive, is not withdrawal, is not escape from real work. It is the deepest work. It is the work that makes all other work effective. Because when your subconscious is aligned with your goals, when your beliefs support your aspirations, when your identity matches your intentions, right action flows naturally. You don't have to force it. You simply express what's already been established in the deeper layers of your being. This is why people who master these principles often seem to accomplish more with less visible effort. They're not superhuman. They're not lucky. They've simply learned to work with their subconscious rather than against it. They've learned that the time to plant seeds is at night, in those final moments before consciousness fades. And they've learned to trust that those seeds, tended consistently, will bear fruit in ways and times they can't always predict or control. Let me offer you a simple framework. A nightly practice you can begin tonight and refine over time. Nothing here is rigid. Everything can be adapted to your circumstances and preferences. But if you're wondering where to start, this provides structure. As you settle into bed, as your body relaxes and your breathing deepens, begin with gratitude. Not elaborate or forced. Simply acknowledge one or two things from your day that you appreciate. Maybe a moment of connection. Maybe a problem solved. Maybe simply the fact that you have a warm bed and another day ahead. Gratitude shifts your nervous system. It signals safety. It opens your mind to possibility rather than threat. It's a gentle way to transition from the day's tensions into receptive stillness. From gratitude, move to review. Scan back through your day and identify one or two moments where you showed up well, where you expressed patience or courage or discipline or kindness, where you aligned with who you're becoming even imperfectly. Acknowledge these moments. Feel the quiet satisfaction of having taken steps, however small, in your chosen direction. This review isn't about perfection. It's about recognition. You're training your mind to notice growth, to value progress, to expect more of the same. Next, practice release. Identify anything you're holding that weighs on you. Frustrations, worries, tensions. Acknowledge them briefly, and then consciously set them aside. Imagine placing them outside your mental bedroom, knowing you can address them tomorrow if needed, but choosing not to carry them into sleep. Feel your body soften as you release what doesn't serve you. Feel your mind clear. This isn't denial. This is wise stewardship of your mental and emotional resources. With mind clear and settled, move into gentle direction. Visualize yourself moving through tomorrow with the qualities you're cultivating. See yourself clear, confident, disciplined, aligned. Don't force specifics. Simply hold the feeling of yourself at your best, responding to whatever arises with your chosen character. Pair this visualization with emotion. Feel what it's like to trust yourself to feel capable, to move with purpose. Let this feeling settle into your body, into your nervous system, into the deeper layers of mind that will guide you when you wake. If it serves you, quietly affirm your identity. I am someone who follows through. I am someone who creates value. I am someone who trusts myself. I am someone who grows through challenge. Choose statements that resonate with your path. Speak them inwardly with conviction, and then release them, trusting your subconscious to absorb them as you drift into sleep. Finally, if you wish, practice future memory. Briefly imagine a moment from your future when something you're building has come together. Feel the satisfaction, the alignment, the quiet knowledge that your consistency mattered. Don't force details. Simply experience the feeling as if you're remembering rather than imagining. And then let it go, trusting that this feeling, repeatedly impressed on your subconscious, is guiding you toward its own fulfillment. This entire practice might take 5 minutes. On some nights, even less. The key is not duration, but consistency and quality of attention. You're not performing a ritual. You're cultivating a relationship with your deeper mind. You're learning to speak its language. You're discovering that you have far more influence over your own development than you might have believed. And you're claiming that influence through patient, persistent practice. Some nights will feel powerful. You'll sense something shifting, something deepening. Other nights will feel ordinary, routine, unremarkable. Both kinds of nights matter. The unremarkable nights, the nights when you practice even though you feel nothing special, these are often the most important. They demonstrate commitment. They prove consistency. They show your subconscious that you're serious, that this isn't a temporary enthusiasm, but a lasting reorientation of how you relate to your own mind. Over time, you'll notice changes. Some will be obvious. You'll find yourself following through more consistently. You'll handle difficulty with greater steadiness. You'll feel more aligned with your purpose, more confident in your direction. Other changes will be subtle. A shift in how you perceive yourself, a quiet certainty that wasn't there before, a sense that what once seemed impossible now feels simply inevitable if you persist. These subtle changes often prove more significant than the obvious ones because they represent deep shifts in identity and belief. Trust the process even when you can't see immediate results. Your subconscious is working even when you sleep, processing, integrating, adjusting. The patterns you impress upon it before sleep continue shaping neural pathways, influencing automatic responses, refining your sense of self throughout the night and into the next day. You're participating in your own becoming with intentionality and wisdom. You're not leaving your development to chance or circumstance. You're taking responsibility for what you become by taking responsibility for what you plant in your subconscious mind. Remember that this isn't about perfection. It's about direction. You won't get it right every night. You won't always feel like practicing. You'll sometimes fall asleep before you complete your review. This is fine. This is expected. What matters is the overall pattern, the consistent return, the accumulated weight of repeated practice over weeks and months. Each night is an opportunity, not a requirement, not a test. An opportunity to strengthen your alignment, to deepen your clarity, to reinforce the beliefs and identity that will carry you toward the life you're building. And here's something beautiful that often emerges after sustained practice. You begin to look forward to these moments before sleep. They stop feeling like something you should do and become something you want to do. They become a refuge, a sanctuary, a time when you reconnect with your deeper self and your truest intentions. In a world full of noise and demand and distraction, these quiet moments before sleep become precious. They become the time when you remember who you are and who you're becoming. They become the time when you align yourself with what matters most. This is available to you starting tonight. You don't need to wait for perfect circumstances. You don't need to master elaborate techniques. You simply need to understand that the moments before sleep are powerful, that your subconscious is listening, and that you can direct what it hears. You need to choose consciously and consistently to use these moments wisely, to review what went well, to release what doesn't serve you, to visualize who you're becoming, to affirm your chosen identity, to cultivate the feelings that match the future you're building. Night after night, these practices accumulate. They create momentum. They establish patterns. They reshape belief. And one day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you'll notice that you've become someone different, not through dramatic transformation, not through sudden breakthrough, but through quiet, consistent direction of your deepest mind during the most receptive moments of each day. You'll have claimed the power that was always yours, the power to shape yourself through intentional use of the time between waking and sleep. So tonight, as you prepare for rest, remember what you now understand. Your final thoughts don't vanish into darkness. They continue working, shaping, influencing. They speak to the part of you that creates your tomorrow. Give them something worth working with. Give them evidence of your growth. Give them images of your becoming. Give them feelings that match your aspirations. Do this tonight, and the night after that, not perfectly, not rigidly, but consistently, patiently, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're participating in their own transformation. The moments before sleep are yours. They've always been yours. Now you know their value. Now you understand their power. Use them well. Use them wisely. Use them as the foundation upon which everything else you're building rests. And trust that in doing so, night after night, you're creating the person capable of living the life you envision. That person isn't distant. That person isn't somewhere else. That person is emerging right now, shaped by the thoughts you choose, the feelings you cultivate, the identity you affirm in these precious moments before consciousness fades and the deeper work begins. Sleep well tonight, knowing you've planted seeds that will bear fruit you can't yet see. Rest in the confidence that your subconscious is working on your behalf, aligning you with your aspirations, preparing you to show up tomorrow as someone slightly more aligned, slightly more capable, slightly closer to who you're becoming. And when you wake, Carry forward what you've established in the night. Let it guide your choices, inform your responses, strengthen your commitment to the path you've chosen. This is how lasting change happens. This is how transformation unfolds, not through force, but through patience. Not through struggle, but through understanding. Not through hoping and wishing, but through consistent direction of the deepest layers of your mind. You have this power. You've always had it. And now, perhaps for the first time, you know how to use it. Beginning tonight. Beginning with the next time your head touches the pillow and your thoughts begin to drift. Beginning with the quiet decision to make these final moments count, to use them wisely, to trust that they matter more than you ever imagined. The day is ending, but your becoming continues. It continues in the darkness, in the stillness, in the receptive space where your subconscious absorbs what you've given it and begins the mysterious work of making it real. Give it something worthy. Give it the truth of who you are at your best. Give it the vision of who you're becoming. And then rest knowing that the most important work happens while you sleep, guided by the thoughts you chose, shaped by the patterns you impressed, directed toward the future you're creating one quiet night at a time.